as we're beginning to move into changing diet choices, it's important to understand the hormones of energy balance within the body, because those are going to be big drivers of what we desire and what we choose to put into our body and what our body does with the nutrients that go into it. So if you think about the hormones of energy balance as what turns our thermostat up or down on all of our physiologic processes, that's probably the easiest way to think about it. There are certain hormones that are released that turn the dial up and say, okay, we have got great energy, we can upregulate all of our physiologic processes. And there are other hormones that are released that say, let's turn the dial down and let's move into a period of being more conservative. So that's really what the energy balance hormones are about, is figuring out where that dial goes on our metabolism. And so we're going to start with talking about leptin. And that's a hormone that a lot of people are not familiar with. It is one that's only been discovered fairly recently, but it's profound because there's some thought that our leptin is what drives all of the other energy balance hormones. And so they're looking at it as being kind of the master hormone of energy balance in the body. Leptin is known as the satiety hormone. So when our cells receive the signal from leptin, it gives our brain the cue that, I'm okay, I've had enough, I don't need any more. We're not in danger of starvation. We can go ahead with all of our normal physiologic processes and none of them have to be dialed back. Our leptin levels cycle throughout the day with our circadian rhythm. So if everything's functioning properly, during the night, our leptin levels drop, which means that when we wake up in the morning and our leptin levels are low, we should wake up and we should feel hungry. As we then feed our body and it gets adequate nutrients, we'll see our leptin levels rise and signal our brain that we have had enough, that we are calorically sufficient, and so our hunger can then decrease. Obviously, we've all seen cases where there are people who are not in any danger of starvation and have fat stores that are more than adequate to sustain life, who are entering into a state where their brain thinks they're in starvation even though they're not. This happens because our cells can develop a resistance to the leptin. In other words, our fat cells are releasing adequate amounts of leptin, and so the leptin is trying to signal that we have adequate fat stores, but our cells have lost their ability to hear the signal that leptin is trying to communicate. And so what happens is then we go into perceived starvation. When we go into starvation, our body goes into this state of, I must conserve. And so what we see when that happens is you're hungry all the time, your body temperature tends to drop because your whole thermostat has gone down, we tend to be fatigued. And so what you see is a diminished drive for everything, a diminished drive for life, a diminished desire to create something new, a diminished desire to expend the energy to be in relationship, a diminished desire to do all the normal reproductive activities. And this is really a result of the body thinking that it's in starvation, and so it's trying to preserve life. There are some real clear signs that you have leptin resistance going on in your body. One of those is uncontrollable cravings, especially for sweet and salty foods and really refined carbohydrates. A lot of the processed foods, but it would also be things like breads and pastas and potato chips and anything that can get really quickly converted from a starch to a sugar in your body. Another thing that you'll see with leptin resistance is a lot of late night eating. You're not hungry in the morning, you don't want breakfast in the morning, but you can't get enough before bed. Another sign of leptin resistance is stress eating. You may have noticed that there are people in your lives who, when they get stressed, they don't want to eat. Their appetite diminishes. That is a fairly healthy response to stress. And there are other people who, when they experience a lot of stress, they want to eat constantly. That desire to eat as a response to stress is largely driven by leptin resistance. Another big thing that you'll see with leptin resistance is weight gain, particularly around the midsection, and an inability to lose weight. You can imagine that if your body already thinks it's in starvation, decreasing calories and doing things to lose weight are going to be really, really ineffective. Another big sign of leptin resistance is having symptoms of low thyroid. So the thyroid is the dial on our metabolism. And so if we think that we're in starvation, what we'll see is all the signs of having low thyroid hormone output. Being cold all the time, having cold hands and feet, constipation, low basal body temperature. If you get really low in thyroid, sometimes you'll see the loss of the lateral third of your eyebrow. Those are some really good indicators that you have low thyroid. And then lastly, we'll see a lot of times fertility and hormone issues when somebody's in a state of leptin resistance. None of those things are really fun to walk around with. So I guess the next question is, how do we get rid of our leptin resistance? And this can be a really difficult answer for people because it means a lot of times we have to do something really different than what we have been doing. If your body thinks that you're in starvation all the time, one of the first things that you have to stop doing is restricting your calorie intake. I've seen so many times patients be really surprised when their first homework is to eat as much whole food as your body wants to eat. And so they'll come back a week later and will be shocked that they've eaten 4 times more than they normally eat and they lost weight. And it feels a lot better. So the most important time to eat is the morning. One of the first things that you have to do to convince your body that it's not starving is you have to feed it in the morning high amounts of protein. And the protein helps to signal the body that it is not in deprivation and that it is okay to expend energy. One of the other things that really can drive leptin resistance is over-exercising. And so this can be a really hard thing, especially when people are trying to lose weight and you tell them that for a season, I want you to back off on some of your exercise habits. Resistance training with heavy weights is fine. Walking is phenomenal. Going for a 15-minute walk after you eat does amazing things for your insulin sensitivity, and it really helps your body to process any sugars that you took in during the meal and your cells to become more sensitive to that insulin signaling. And so when you're resetting your leptin, it's a really good time to just stick with nice, casual, fun walks in the morning and in the evening. And other than that, this is your big opportunity to take a rest and really recover your body from any heavy exercise protocols that you've been doing. Another great strategy for getting rid of leptin resistance is a really high quality ketogenic diet. We'll talk about what that looks like later on, but for now, just know that that's a great strategy that you can employ when you're trying to get rid of leptin resistance within your body. So, just to recap, we are going to begin with eating a high protein meal within 30 minutes of waking up, a really nice balanced diet throughout the day where you keep the proteins and fats coming so that your body is convinced that it's not in starvation. And then lastly, when you're resetting leptin resistance, it's a time to really back off of cardiovascular training. The exercise regime that is going to be the most beneficial is doing, heavy lifting 2 or 3 days a week and a 15-minute walk in the morning and another walk in the evening after you eat your last meal. As you start employing these different strategies and you start to see your brain being responsive to leptin again, what you should notice is an increase in your overall energy levels, increase in body temperature, increase in your drive to create and to play, an increase in all of your normal sex hormone function, an increase in your desire to exercise and your ability to recover from exercise, and a change in your food cravings. It's just another piece that makes it then a little bit easier to continue to make healthy food choices that support the health of your whole body and brain.